So this week we're going to talk more about using verbs. I have a friend who's another English teacher who says that a sentence is the story of a verb. And I think that's actually pretty accurate. He was telling me this yesterday, so it's not in the PowerPoint yet. But the majority of a sentence often does have to do with the verb. You may have noticed predicates are often much longer than subjects. And the subject needs to match the verb because the verb's really the most important part of it, even if the subject is the thing that's doing the verb. So we're going to talk a little bit more about verbs and how we use them. I'm not going to go into everything you could possibly ever want to know about verbs. I'm actually going to focus mostly on the opportunities that I've seen in this class, the opportunities that I've seen working with thousands of students with this, and just the things I also know from talking to other teachers you're likely to have points taken off for that are likely to cause misunderstandings. So we're focusing on the things that will be most important to helping you use the language. We're not going to worry about things like the subjunctive or what a copula is or all those outlier things that you don't really need to know right now. So we're going to start with what's called subject-verb agreement. And as you know, verbs express actions and states of being. There's a subject, which is the focus of the sentence, who is performing the action or in the state of being, and then the predicate verb, which is the state of being or the action that is being expressed, right? Well, those two things go together, and so they need to match, and making them match is called agreement, and it's called making them agree. So nouns and verbs have different forms depending on the number and person, and we're going to talk more about what that means in the next couple slides. And although rules typically do apply to pretty much all noun-verb combinations, we're really going to focus on subjects and verbs. The nouns and verb combinations that occur later in the sentence are less likely to cause errors. The errors are less likely to cause misunderstandings. Points are less likely to be taken off. So they're really not as important as focusing in on the subject and verb. I will note it on your papers, though, if I see some noun-verb agreement errors that you might want to look at in the future. So nouns and verbs have to agree in terms of number and person. So number refers to whether or not the noun-verb combination is singular or plural. Normally it refers to the noun being singular or plural. So a singular noun is one of something. So it would be the cat. My cat's walking up to me right now. A plural noun would be the cats or cats. So there's more than one of it. Person or point of view refers to the perspective or vantage point that the writing is being written from or to. So first person is from the point of view of the person who's writing it. I am writing this. I wrote this. We write this. The second person is directed at the audience or the reader, which would be you write this. You are writing it. You wrote it. Third person is as if the person isn't there. So the writer wrote this. The writer is writing it. And first person and third person can be in singular or plural. But before I look at that, I wanted to kind of show you this graphic of monsters, which is cute and hopefully makes this make a little more sense. First person is from the perspective of this person right here, I, we. So this person, or this monster, is talking about and pointing to the I, we person, so it's you, because he's pointing at that one. And then this third person is talking about these other people who are way over there, he, she, it, they. And so then this person would be from third person. So it has to do with who is what's the point of view, who's doing the speaking, or who's it directed at. You'd be surprised how hard it is to find a simple chart like this online. I found one that I liked and used last semester, and then I realized that there was a typo in it. And so I ended up having to make one. So the point of view here, first person is from the speaker or writer. So I walk in singular, we walk in the plural. Second person is at the audience or reader. You walk in the singular, and it's the same in the plural. You walk. Third person as if the reader is not there. It's not directed at anyone or from really anyone's point of view. He, she, it walks, they walk. There's a reason that this is bolded, and we're going to talk about this on the next slide. Forming verbs, which is called conjugating them, is really pretty easy in most cases, with the exception of some irregular verbs, most of which you've probably already memorized through usage. We form verbs in pretty much the same way. All except for third person singular is formed the same way. Third person singular is different because you add s or es to the end. So for example, we're continuing with walk. In first person singular and plural, it's walk. I walk, we walk. Second person singular and plural. You walk, you walk. Third person plural, same as the others, they walk. Third person singular is the outlier, he, she, it walks. There's an S on the end, which is why in this last slide, this is in bold. So there is an exception with the verb to be. It is one of those irregular verbs. It's probably the most regular verb in English. And I kind of highlight it because a lot of writers, particularly those of certain dialects, do struggle with the standard English version of how we conjugate to be. And that's not to say that the speakers of those dialects are doing it wrong in quotes. I actually think that the grammatical sense for those dialects makes more sense than the standard English, and I wish we'd change it to that. But I'm alone in that. Most people would consider it incorrect. So this is what the correct version of conjugating to be looks like. In the singular present, it's I am. In the plural present, it's we are. Second singular and plural present is you are. Third singular present, he, she, it is. Plural present, they are. In the past, the singular is I was. Plural past is we were. Singular past and plural past are you are. And singular past is he, she, it was. Plural past is they were. And you can see that here were is kind of like are, and was is kind of like is. So that's kind of a way to remember it. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about types of nouns. Certain noun types do agreement a little bit differently than other noun types. So nouns can be common or proper, and we'll talk more about this later, but a common noun is just kind of a general noun. A proper noun is a specific named place, person, or thing. Proper nouns are the ones you capitalize. So you go to Jacksonville State University. That's a specific named university. So we capitalize the J and the S and the U. But if you said, I go to university, you wouldn't capitalize university because you're not talking about a specific named university. Nouns can also be countable or non-count, also called mass nouns. Countable literally means it's a thing you can count. You could pick it up and count it. Mass or uncountable are things that you can't count. So I could say I have 2 shoes. I couldn't say I have 2 milk. I would have to add something to that to say I have 2 gallons of milk, because milk is not something you can count. Nouns can also be concrete or abstract. So concrete are things that you can sense. They're things that you can smell, taste, touch, anything like that, see. Abstract are nouns that you cannot physically sense. They're things like emotions and ideas. So love, time, fear, freedom, those would all be abstract. Abstract nouns are not capitalized. That's a common mistake. And then these other 2 we're not going to worry about as much about, but compound nouns are when you have 2 or more words put together to make a new noun, and collective nouns are when you have a group of something that is treated like a single entity. Team, pile, stack, flock, bunch, class, anything like that. You can have one group of people in that entity, or you can have multiple groups like it. So kind of recapping this, nouns can be common or proper, countable or uncountable, or concrete or abstract. And the way we do subject-verb agreement varies a little bit for the types of nouns. So count and compound nouns can be singular or plural, right? So you can have 1 cat or you can have more than 1 cat. You can have 1 team or you can have more than 1 team. And in those cases, the subjects and verbs must agree in the way we've talked about thus far. Collective nouns, same deal. You can have 1 team or multiple teams. So the subject and verbs must agree in the way that we've been talking about. A lot of the other groups of nouns are pretty much always treated as singular. If you can't count it, it's singular. So an uncountable or mass noun is always singular. You would never say love are good. You would say love is good because it's treated as if it's just one thing. Abstract nouns are normally singular because normally something that's abstract can't be counted. And so we typically just treat it as singular. Proper nouns, they're normally a single entity, one person, one thing, so they're normally also singular. And in all of those, your verbs are typically going to end in S. So that's kind of a good cheat sheet for you to kind of know when to when you have to focus on doing this whole conjugation, making your subject verb thing agree. You always know that uncountable, abstract, and proper nouns are 99.99%, if not 100, going to be singular, and the verb is going to end in S. So we're going to kind of stop here. This has been the general information on subject verbs. Now, after that, we're going to look at specific ways that we can avoid or correct errors with subject-verb agreement. So I'll be right back with that in the second part of this lecture. Go ahead and get a cup of coffee or a beverage of your choice if you need it, and I will be back momentarily.